Elden Ring is a game that I'm sure pretty much everyone has heard of because, with legendary names like George R.R. Martin attached to it, From Software attached to it, obviously developing it, pretty much every streamer on the planet at this point playing through the game, it's one of those larger-than-life video game experiences that I think often people don't actually sit and think about why it is such an important game, why it is so impactful, and what it actually did for gaming and for players. Now, I do want to make something clear. When we talk about Elden Ring, it is not lost on me that the state of AAA gaming is not the same as the state of indie gaming, of smaller gaming. Now, while a lot of indie games are not as profitable as AAA games, some of them are extremely profitable, some of them do extremely well and don't fly under the radar at all. They're enjoyed and beloved by fans. So when we're talking about the gaming industry, I'm mainly talking about AAA gaming, because when Elden Ring actually came out, AAA gaming was kind of in a slump. Now, that doesn't mean that there were no good games coming out, but what it does mean essentially is that a lot of people were kind of resigning themselves to the future of AAA gaming being a snooze fest when it actually comes to intentionality and not product-driven experiences. People were kind of getting used to video games moving away from being an art form, moving away from being a expression form, and moving more and more, at least in the AAA space, towards how do we get as much money as possible for as little work as possible? How do we drip feed content to consumers, not players, consumers? How do we get them to consume constantly? How do we get them to come back to our game over and over and over again, but not just come back to it like the old games, like single player adventures and experiences like Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts or anything like that. No. How do we get them to come back and pay every time that they're coming back to enjoy just a little more content and live in that world? Games as a service felt like it was kind of becoming king at this time, and it wasn't really at the point yet where people were really sick of it. Elden Ring changed a lot of people's perceptions on what value is in gaming for the amount of money that you spend. Now, before we hop further into it, if you do enjoy today's video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, those things do help my channel. It's still very small and I am trying to grow it. I did play through Elden Ring as well over on my other channel, Degenerate Plays. The link is in the description down below to that channel. And my question of the day today for you is, do you have a favorite Souls-born game? And if you, wanted to share one, do you have a favorite Souls-like game? There's games like The Surge, there's games like Lords of the Fallen, I believe Lies of P kind of counts as a Souls-like game. Are there games like that that you really love that you think I should check out? And why? Why do you love them so much? I'd be very interested to hear why. Being an old school From Software fan, I wasn't sure what to make of this at first. It was such a daunting, huge experience that it really kind of weighed on me when I first played it, and I thought, why did they make this game so big? This can't possibly all be good, right? There's no way this is intentionally driven content. There's no way that this is not just an expansion of the world for the sake of it. We've seen so many games get bloated and get inflated to the point where it's like they're just trying to waste your time and take up your time. Elden Ring is one of the few games in the last handful of years that I feel like was long with a purpose. Now, From Software CEO Hidetaka Miyazaki is pretty much synonymous with the company. You hear his name and you probably think things like Dark Souls, Demon Souls, now Elden Ring. Well, he's had a lot of thoughts on these games over the years, and he actually talked a little bit about the length of what he had thought it would take people, kind of playing coy with it before the game came out, and even had suggested that the main story could probably be beat in about 30 hours. But if you actually look at what most normal players did to get through the game, it took a lot of them around 100. Now, some, it was much faster. I'm sure there's people who got through the game in 50 hours. I'm sure there's people who probably got through it in 40 and maybe didn't do everything. And there are speedrunners who can do quite a bit with just a little bit of time, obviously. But the just normal common denominator gamer got a lot of value and a lot of time out of a single playthrough of this game before any DLC. Now, it's worth mentioning that when I'm talking about this, Shadow of the Erdtree hasn't even launched. It's coming out in about a week, and adding hours and hours and multiple bosses more to the game that are taking place in another area. It's again like another expansion of this purpose-driven world. Games like Elden Ring have gotten a lot of flack over the years with being called, difficult just for the sake of it, or big just for the sake of it. And even hardcore Souls fans like me sometimes wonder, okay, is this going to be intentional? But as I played through this game, it really won me over and showed me how much you really could be getting for the amount you pay for these video games. It's also worth mentioning that even though this was the price of a standard video game, it was wildly successful and really delivers hundreds if not thousands of hours of replayability of this same game in a totally single player driven experience. There are multiplayer elements if you want to do invasions, you want to do co-op type stuff like the old games, you certainly can. And I personally would argue that there's some bosses that I think are kind of designed more towards that jolly cooperation. But everything is beatable by yourself. You can play through this game start to finish, just you, or summoning some NPCs in the game, and beat it. And I'd never really encountered any quest lines or any areas of the game that really deeply felt unfinished, or felt like they weren't purpose-driven, weren't actually made with intent. Because something I've noticed nowadays is that so many games, when they get big, they lose that intentionality. You go from point A to point B, and maybe you can go, off the beaten path to point C, D, E, and F, but really A, B, and then jumping to maybe G is kind of the actual natural progression of the game. Like, the side content doesn't matter, it's just there to waste time to make you feel like you got value. But when they were making Elden Ring, and they were making it difficult, and they were making an open world, they didn't want to do these things just for the sake of it. Miyazaki actually talked about this a little bit in an interview with IGN, saying, "What I want to stress is that we didn't set out with the goal to make an open world game in the traditional sense. We don't set out to create a difficult game. We set out to create a challenging game. And in order to achieve that, we need there to be threats and dangers, and we need there to be unknowns." He even went on to talk about it more, saying that their philosophy and their main idea is just to trust the players. We trust that they'll overcome these challenges, and we trust that they'll make these discoveries. And I think giving them trust just creates a healthy landscape for them to play and adventure. And I think that trust too is something that's so important, because so many video game developers and development companies now will talk down to you. Not as a player, not as someone who maybe also understands some aspects of game design. Yes, I know we're not coders, but some of us who have been playing games for 10, 20, 30 years, we do also understand the basics of game progression, design, things like that. But so many companies will talk down to you like you're an absolute idiot. Like, you're here to spend your money, spend your time, shut the hell up, come back, spend more money, spend more time. And they drip feed you like a baby, as if you're in a little toddler chair, and they're going, "You're an idiot, here's the airplane." They think you're an idiot. And Miyazaki and From Software have never treated their players, never treated the communities around their games like they're stupid. They've never treated them like they don't matter, like they don't have value, and they've never acted like they would be just as well off without these players, which is unfortunately an attitude I've seen more and more of in the AAA gaming space. An attitude that's moved away from, hey, you know what? We appreciate your feedback. As long as you keep it, mostly respectful, we appreciate what you have to say, good or bad. That obviously is going to help us make a better game, and we want to make good games because this is an art form. It's gone away from that more and more to, you're the consumer, please be quiet and spend your money. And if you don't, there's 25 people in line behind you that will, you're irrelevant. I have never gotten that feeling from Software. I've never gotten that feeling from any of their games. And I think Elden Ring really encapsulates that, because it's really their biggest Souls-like or Souls-born game to date, and yet it still manages to capture that wonder, that discovery, that intentionality of the world that actually makes it so that you feel as if your time, your energy, and your money are all being valued. I can't tell you how many people got into the Souls-born genre because of the value of Elden Ring, because of that intentionality and world. I have friends who I couldn't convince to touch Dark Souls with a 10-foot pole, who tried Elden Ring because of the promise of an open, sprawling world, and are now actually looking at playing through older Soulsborne games because they realize that heart and that love and that soul of what a good game is in these games. The worst of the From Software games are better than most of the good games out there on the market. You find the most flawed From Software game, and I'm telling you, it has probably double or triple the heart of a lot of other games. that you can think of. And I think that that's really brilliant and special, and I think it's one of the reasons why people keep coming back to these games and why they are so important and why that value matters, because after playing Elden Ring, I can tell you this, there's a lot of people who now realize what they could be getting with their money, what they could be paying for, and what other companies are actually trying to give them instead. And I think that that wake-up call was really important in this era of AAA gaming, and I think it was just another kick in the pants that made a lot of games start to lose favor with communities who realized how little they were getting and how disrespected they were actually being. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to let me know. Leave a like, leave a comment. I love hearing from you. You know, this is, like I said, a smaller channel, so supporting it means the world to me. We do have our own store, cosmobunny.shop, where you can actually get handmade resin pieces. These are from repurposed comic books and manga and all kinds of stuff. So purchasing there actually helps us out a lot. We also do, of course, as well, have a Fortnite code. There are online games that I like, believe it or not. I don't just play hardcore single player games. I do also dabble in these other types of games. So if you want to support this channel, our Fortnite code DJAY123 on the screen does help support us a lot. I do appreciate those kinds of collaborations because, you know, in YouTube, it's an uncertain beast. But we appreciate you very much. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shway.